Okay, we're good. Yep. Yeah.
Was thinking the same
I'm gonna
thing.
call the meeting to order. If everybody would rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda are the appointments to be made in the Irvington Police Department. And we have two resolutions to adopt before we get to the more important formalities. That's all right. I'm sure they might want to record it for later. So the resolutions are resolved to appoint Dennis J. Monterulli to the permanent position of police officer recruit grade at an annual salary of $49,935, effective January 8th, 2024, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 78 weeks. And further resolved to appoint Laura C. D. Holly, to the contingent permanent position of police officer recruit grade at an annual salary of $49,935, effective January 8, 2024, subject to the completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 78 weeks. So I'll make the motion. Anyone in a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'm going to ask both of the almost new officers to come up and be sworn in. We one at a time, it'll make it a little less confusing. So just basically raise your right hand. I, Laura C. Polly,
I, Laura C. Polly,
Village of Irvington,
for the Village of Irvington,
County of Westchester,
County of Westchester,
State of New York,
State of New York,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
and will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
You can stay, you can take some pictures.
Take a picture afterwards. All right. Okay. We're going to do the same thing. Raise your right hand. I, Dennis J. Monterulli. I, Dennis J. Monterulli. Of the Village of Irvington. Of the Village of Irvington. County of Westchester, State of New York. County of Westchester, State of New York. Do solemnly swear or affirm. Solemnly swear or affirm. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of New York. And the Constitution of the State of New York. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer according to the best of my ability. According to the best of my ability. Congratulations. Sure, of course.
I know, I was thinking the same thing, but the move is worse.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll get a picture.
Congratulations to the families.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, no, fine. Yeah. This is
Oh, gotcha.
And I'm assuming in the future I can skip or affirm. I'm
Yes.
reading both.
Right.
They can
Well, they get to choose.
I know
They get
they
to
do.
choose,
I know,
but-
that's why I read them both. But,
now there's
Okay.
plenty of parking.
Yeah.
He was covering all the bases.
It's
That's
not that
exactly
there was
right.
no parking, I just came down and I looked, and by the time I realized they were all filled, and I had to go all the way around. And there was someone like stopped in Buckhouse Street and not moving. So I
Okay.
was a prisoner on Buckhouse Street.
Next up are the checks over $25,000, there's 4 of them here I see. Tectonic Engineering and Surveying for the Reservoir Dam Engineering at $26,555. United Visual Products Company for DPW snowplow rack at $34,912. Pacific Trans Global Construction Corp for Town Hall Theater HVAC support and DPW Mechanics Garage Work, $46,296. And again, Pacific Trans Global Construction Corp for library bathroom operations at $158,391. I have a question actually for our village clerk treasurer. I should know the answer to this, but since I get presented these checks, are they presented after the fact or before the fact? So sometimes I think they didn't come before, correct? Because I recall signing. Or let me ask the question differently. When do they get sent out? After we approve or after this is?
After you and I sign, well, no, before I'll send the email and then you and I sign and then we mail out the check.
Got it. So basically the board has seen it, but not
Yes.
necessarily the community. When I originally did this, it was because it's not that there was a mistake made in the payment, it was a mistake made in, perhaps there could have been a better way to do the payment with a letter of credit or something that would have prevented a loss on, I think it's related to the first fire truck for 2 years. Yeah, it's a long time ago. But so what I was trying to do when I suggested this the first time was not only make sure that trustees could hear it, but perhaps others who would say, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a good idea. And I don't know if there's a way to do this mechanically, and we can talk about this offline.
Okay.
So that it's presented at the meeting, and maybe you can't because you have to pay the checks, and it's enough that everybody else on the board has seen them. But you could think about it, and we'll talk about it at another point in time.
And aren't these payments for things that the board has already heard about?
Yeah.
These are just
They
sort of
are.
interim payments.
They are, so it goes more to the mechanism of payment than it doesn't necessarily. And maybe it's too late, even in that regard, if they've approved, let's just do a payment as opposed to we're putting a deposit down on something.
We mail them out usually the Monday following the email that goes out on Friday.
Probably enough time for you can stop check, can't you?
Yes.
It's not gonna happen. I'm describing a hypothetical that obviously happened, 10 years ago, and maybe it would have made no difference in the outcome, but okay, leave it at, don't change it. But, if there's ever something that's a really pressing payment that's gotta go out right away, we should at least talk about it and make sure that everybody here is focused on it, that's all. Okay, enough. Sorry. Correspondence. Okay.
I have one announcement.
Sure.
I'm just going to read a very quick thing I wrote out. Although he was just here and not here in the meeting room now, let me take a moment to officially announce Joe Archino's retirement effective February 16th. For more than 35 years, Joe has selflessly served the village and its residents as superintendent of recreation and parks, accepting every board of trustee assignment and expansion of his responsibilities, and always finding a way to get things done. As a former member of the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee, and for the past few years as trustee liaison, I've seen Joe's dedication to the village, his staff, and our residents, particularly our neediest families and our senior citizens. The breadth of our rec programming and upkeep of our parks, our nature center, and the Irvington Woods are second to none. We'll find a new rec superintendent, but Joe will be replaced.
I would second that. Having seen Joe in action over the years, both as a village official and as a resident, I think he's done a very, very good job. So that will be missed, but hopefully we will find somebody who can handle the job well. Okay, next up is correspondence. First up is a letter to the board relating to Hudson Loft noise problems, and it's from the, looks like most of the neighborhood on South Buckhouse Street, Maple Street, Station Road, and it is focused particularly on our noise regulations, and and in particular on the noise emanating from Hudson Loft. So I'm not going to read the entire letter only because I referenced it at the last meeting, unless somebody wants me to, and that because we have at least something of an update. And when Larry gets back to his microphone, we have. Well, I'll let you do the telling, at least in terms of what we've done so far, which is to reach out, at least to the owners. We need to speak to the owners on a couple of subjects, and this is one of them. So,
So we're waiting to set up a meeting. I think probably a little bit later in January, we'll have a meeting on the calendar and we'll try to make some progress on the issue.
And to be, so I'm clear, it is not Hudson Loft itself, it is the owner of the building of Hudson Loft that we're reaching out to. I'm also assuming that we haven't gotten any complaints in the interim period.
Well, no, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of them reach my office.
Understood.
Right,
Fair
they
enough.
make, there are a lot of police calls about this.
Yeah. Yes. I just want to see if there's anything else. So they're basically asking us to take action, and so what we want to start with is reaching out to the owners of the building and see what we can do. Second is a letter from it's a letter relating to the Irvington facilities feasibility and implementation study. And it's quite comprehensive and talks about approaches that we can take. This is the follow-up to the firehouse and related projects that was presented to the village and rejected. And I think we've made it fairly apparent that we're going to try to take a different, not necessarily, it will be a different approach, but an approach that involves the community and sets up a committee. And so the plan at this point is at our next work session, we'll be discussing proposed charters, which incorporate a lot of what is in this letter and other suggestions we've received. And then we will be looking for, once we've got the charters where the way we want them to be, we will then be looking for members. And I know that people have volunteered already. I will tell, since there are some folks in the audience, that it would be helpful to have brief bios, even if it's just a paragraph of who these people are, if we don't know them already. It makes it a little easier for us to approve them. Unless somebody in the audience wants me to read through the letter, I'm going to move on. Okay. All right, the consent agenda.
Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Public comment. If anybody has public comment, they're welcome to make it. Sure, please.
Please.
And just tell us who you are. If you don't
And where you live.
Andrew Bergman, I'm a son,
For them, it's not.
okay.
Yeah.
Resident of Buckout Street, 79 South Buckout. I just wanted to say thank you very much for discussing the issue. You've all read the letter. I think somebody in one of the previous meetings made a comment that many years ago, maybe it was looked into a little bit. And it's not something that you can measure using decibel meters. It's really, our homes shake from the base that's coming through the ground up, like through all the homes on our street. It keeps our kids awake. In my case, my wife is a nurse and she often works on the weekends, and she has to wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning for an early shift. And it's actually, in her case, a question of life and death, because she's going to work at the hospital and she needs to sleep. So appreciate anything you can do to address the issue, and if we can tackle it with legislation, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we are focused on it. And as I mentioned in the last meeting, actually there's more than one drummer on this board. So we are cognizant of what noise can do to our neighbors and what's necessary to try to baffle them.
Ben Weltman, neighbor Vandy's at 87 South Buckout. I think the big thing that I really do appreciate that you guys are taking this seriously and reconsidering it after it seems like 5 years of silence on it. I think for me, I have young kids. They are definitely getting woken up by this. You guys saw in my letter just what we're experiencing. It doesn't happen the other 5 days, 6 days of the week. So when they're not operating, it is exactly what Irvington is known for. When they're operating, it is not what Irvington is known for. And so, as somebody who lived in Brooklyn for a long time, as I mentioned, this is worse than that. And I think the big thing is that I appreciate you guys are going to talk to the owners. I appreciate that you guys are going to talk to business. Really recommend you guys talk to all of the residents who have signed onto this letter. Because I started asking around to some of the neighbors, I realized it wasn't just us. I thought, and I think it's an inconvenience for us, and it's not something that we signed on for when we moved into the community. And so I just want to make sure that the business interests are not, more important than the residential interests, which I think are second to none in this community. And so just open to any conversations if you guys, happy to have you guys over for dinner. If you want, but I think it's especially at 10 o'clock or
right.
at 11 o'clock at night.
Much later.
Sorry, I'm busy.
But yeah, I mean, it's just it's not isolated, and I think it's very apparent from the letters, and it goes beyond Buckout. And I think that's what's really important for you guys to consider.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I don't think we know there's a problem, right? That's, we've passed that, you've convinced us, you've won summary judgment at that stage, right? Now we're just talking about what to do about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I will say the IPD has been incredibly helpful. They know that it's an issue. They're just handicapped with, I think, the laws. And as you guys saw, there's two laws that I think are basically fighting each other. The one that I mentioned in the letter, that we mentioned in the letter, is a law here. It is, and I think what has happened is, when I talked to some of the IPD officers, they basically said, we've been told to go after the more lenient one, the phonograph law. Mm-hmm. I think I just am sort of curious, like, that we should be discussing, for the time being, there is a law in place that at 7 p.m. the waterfront businesses should not be they really should not be interfering with the the privacy of our homes with these noise issues. They are breaking the law every weekend. That is the law. And so I think that's just the one thing I think you guys should just be aware of, is we're going to continue to call the IPD. I think it's a waste of IPD resources on the weekends. I'll just be totally frank. They're going multiple times a week or a night. And I just don't think it's what the IPD officers should be doing, especially when the law is so clear. But I'm sure Dan is probably going to speak, maybe not. But yeah, I mean, that's just, I appreciate you guys really hearing it out. And I think we're happy to discuss with you guys any of our recommendations. Obviously, would appreciate any intervention from you guys to remedy this.
Well, the chief was here a minute ago, so I don't want to presume to speak for him, but I can only imagine that he would say that until a longer term solution is that he would welcome the phone calls if there's something violated.
Yeah, no, and I will tell you, the IPD has been extremely helpful. They're not, there's no complaints with them at all. They're just handcuffed with a little bit of the conflicting laws, and also a business that is I think stretching I think what Irvington is really all about. So thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Dan Greenberg. I live at 100 South Buckout, which I know my two neighbors, they're on the east side of the street. I'm on the west side, so I'm a little bit closer to the loft. And I've lived here for 25 years. I participated in many village meetings, although I'm happy to see that there's been a total turnover in the personnel of the board and the mayor. And welcome, Mayor Siegel. I was real glad, and I could say.
I do recall you coming to meetings when I was mayor. But
oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, we both were younger with less
yes,
red hair.
That is
yeah,
correct.
with less gray. I was wondering, is that the same guy? Yeah, you're the same guy. Okay. The only people who were here before, Larry was here, and the village attorney, of course, she was here. I recognize them, but I'm happy to see new faces. I guess my profession is I teach Latin American history at Pace University, the one downtown, not the one nearby. So I'm going to cite a definition of liberty by a great Latin American, Benito Juarez, who was also the first Native American elected to be chief executive of any country in the world, which was in 1857. And he said, he was from the Liberal Party, and he defined liberty. He said, liberty in Spanish, la libertad es el derecho ajeno, or the liberty is the right of the other person, which I think is a very elegant way of putting it. And another very famous theorist, John Stuart Mill, basically said the same thing in his famous essay on liberty. And we are the other people. We are the people affected by the violations of our liberty, in this case, to have peace and quiet late at night. Ever since the Loft started putting on these concerts or parties, which are usually on weekends and often last until 2 or 3 a.m., the New Year's Eve one was typical. And of course, New Year's Eve is exceptional, but it's all the time. It's all the weekends. As they said, the whole house shakes. And it's basically, don't hear the music so much. You hear the bass drums, this throbbing beat. And it's amazing how I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. I slept through, I come from Seattle, and in 1951, which is when I was 3 years old, they had an earthquake which was almost as powerful as the great San Francisco quake of '06. And my family always told me that I was the only one in the family who slept through the earthquake. Of course, I was only 3, but in any case, I am a deep sleeper, but I cannot sleep at night when this throbbing bass drum keeps on going all night long. And I try to console myself by sort of moving with the music like this, trying to get into it, and no, it keeps me awake. And I read I was one of the signatories of the letter, and I think the main point is the one that Ben mentioned, that it is the law that music, that loud noise is supposed to stop, and the law should be enforced. I guess that's the bottom line. And why? Because liberty is the right of the other person. Tranquility. Ever since we moved to, my late wife Sylvia was the reason we moved here from Brooklyn. And one of the main reasons is Brooklyn, we lived in Park Slope, very noisy neighborhood. And right next to us was a playground, which was sort of converted into an all-night nightclub. She really wanted to get out of there. So in '97, we moved out here. And I have to say, one of the best things is it was really nice and quiet. And Buckout Street has gotten a lot busier since we've been there, but still it's pretty peaceful and quiet. And I would like to get that back again, I guess. And I really urge you to take action on this, because it is a violation of our basic right to tranquility and peace. So thank you very much, members of the board and Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Not sure if it's a comment, but I thought
I think it's September.
My name is Mike Aziz, I'm 292 Riverview. I thought he'd come tonight because I was the principal author of the feasibility study paper. Just to offer to answer any questions or offer clarifications on anything, if the board may have them. If not, just wanted to again voice my support for you guys taking this on and discussing it further in the work session to come. I think it's really about making more informed decisions for the village and not leaving money on the table. I mean, there are programs out there which are listed in the back of the memo that our neighbors are using to take full advantage of state funding and other funding that's out there to execute on the goals that villages like ours have. So, I applaud you for taking this on, but just wanted to come tonight in case there's anything I could.
No need to apologize. I thought it was well written and helpful. And happy that there's a group of people that want to get involved. And if there was I hesitate to use the word flaw, but if there was I'll use it anyway, there was a flaw in the way it was approached previously, I think I guess one of the problems of being on this board is when you think you've communicated something to the community, you find out nobody's heard it. And that is a circumstance that can be remedied by bringing the community more into the process. I guess.
I just want to say one thing. I do want to say that, that of course, the intent is to go look for grants in every possible way. I think that was part of what they originally, you know, when they talked about it. So for sure, that's, you know, obviously none of us wants to pay more than we need to pay.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, to give our village administrator and our grant writers some credit, they have found some very, very substantial grants for a lot of projects.
Mhm.
Since this one didn't quite get off the ground, they didn't get the opportunity, but that would certainly be something we would do, and if people have suggestions, we'd consider.
Well, I was having said that at the meetings where it was presented like a year and a half ago and a year, every time we've had those presentations, it's always come up that there were different opportunities for grants relating to different aspects of the project. And some of the things that were explained as to why they're a part of the project or how they're approached was presented in a way, this would make it available for this kind of grant, or this would make it available for that kind of grant. So that was always part of the planning process.
You know, I understand. It's very competitive. I was also citing grants for the actual planning work too, you know, which makes you more competitive for the implementation grants, which, you know, there aren't as many of them out there, but, you know, for the ones that are received, they really do put you in a pole position to be able to get actual capital dollars.
That's great.
So, you know,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for the letter, very helpful.
yeah, great.
Anyone else? Okay, next up is the consent agenda. So I'll take a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? I'll get it right eventually. That was quicker than usual.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you. Okay, a public hearing to consider a local law amending the zoning code to eliminate the 5-year requirement for the short-term rental registration.
So a motion to open the hearing?
Well, right. I'll take a motion to open the hearing.
Second.
Got it.
I think so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Question was,
Sounds about right.
Okay, any comments?
wasn't it? Yeah, that's right.
I think we discussed this.
Yes,
Ad
I
nauseam.
no, well, I meant from the rest of the world,
Oh.
since it is a public hearing.
Yeah.
If there are none, I assume there's no particular time I have to keep this open. If there's nobody here and nobody responding, I will,
There's nobody online.
No.
all right, then I will close the motion. I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so. Next up, we will adopt the local law changing the code to eliminate the 5-year requirement. So the resolution is resolved to adopt the local law amending the zoning code to eliminate the 5-year requirement for short-term rental registration. I'm making that motion. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And we have the one behind it. Okay. Next up is an authorization to submit an application for funding for EV charging stations. Do you want to talk a little bit about this, Larry? Because it's, you know, the economics are interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they certainly require some bit of explanation. So the short answer is we're not spending $425,000 to put in 58 charging stations. Because of a very generous county grant program, we do plan to put in the 58 charging stations, but the net cost to us would not be any higher than $25,000. The numbers are actually estimated to be a little less, but we put a little cushion in there just to be sure. The locations of the charging stations would be at Scenic Hudson Park, the Irvington Library or adjacent there too, Field Point parking lot, Half Moon South, Half Moon North, in front of Village Hall, the O'Hara Nature Center, Ardsley and Hudson train station, East Sunnyside Lane parking lot, and the Aqueduct Lane parking lot. The way that we plan to administer this is that although the charging stations will be installed, the spaces don't have to be marked as dedicated to EV charging only. We can certainly dedicate some of the spaces to EV charging, but we know that this is probably more capacity than we need right now. Will it be more capacity in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? We'll see. But the remaining spaces that are not needed for specifically dedicated to charging, we could mark as whatever wording you come up with, EV preferred or not, or, you know, whatever. But it doesn't have to be dedicated to EV parking only. So we wouldn't be taking, that's the balancing act, is that we wouldn't be taking spaces that are used by non-EVs and creating a shortage for the people who don't have EVs yet.
So I'm sure we can fix the problem, but we need to keep in mind that there are parking limits where some of these spots are. Number two, the EVs may have to exceed those parking limits to be able to charge, so that needs to be taken care of.
Yep.
Number three, someone who's not an EV that's using a preferred spot could be there for 6 hours, you know, for a number of hours, block their spot. It's useless to have an EV spot in those situations. So those are all things that we'll have to sort of work through.
Definitely, yeah.
But
And that'll be
it's
taken
certainly
care of.
better to have more rather than less EVs.
Particularly at this price.
Having just got an EV myself.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so now, you know, this is, and I've said this before at other meetings, right now, the rate that we charge is zero, as you
Right,
know.
and that's the other thing.
We're not going to be able to do that going forward. I think that we'll be having those discussions during the budget season, and we'll put together a proposal for what the rates would be going forward. But they would, I mean, they would be competitive with other similar charging locations. It's not, we're not going to overprice ourselves or.
And you make,
underprice.
and with this volume of installations, it's the convenience factor. It's worth something as well.
Right.
So, okay, any further questions or, okay. The resolutions are resolved to authorize the submission of a grant application to the County of Westchester to fund the purchase and installation of electric vehicle charging stations, and further resolved to authorize the expenditure of up to $425,000 in advance of the receipt of County of Westchester rebates, which will result in a net expenditure of up to $25,000, and further resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute any documents necessary for the grant application. So moved. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Next up is update on the request for financial assistance from the Irvington Volunteer Ambulance Corps. I think I speak for the group that we're in favor of doing something. And obviously there will be a negotiation, we need a group to do that. We can talk about who's going to be on the village, representing the village at a later point in time. But we will start with sort of a one-year program and then see where we go from that. And we also will have to sit down with the ambulance corps. I think you've made efforts to try to get some dates, at least I saw that in an email, so we can do that. Anybody else have, I know we've sort of given you parameters for the general discussion that'll happen with IVAC, but everybody here is certainly in favor of moving forward.
I would like to get details either through IVAC talking to the Tarrytown VAC or through perhaps Larry talking to Rich Singland, exactly what their funding formula is in terms of how they work, because that sounds like something that at least we should be aware of and discussing.
Yeah, I can do that, and I'll also get a copy of the Dobbs Ferry agreement as well, just so you see both.
I mean, those seem to be our closest peer groups in terms of usage. Thanks.
Okay.
So, you know, just to put some clarity on this, so the ideal negotiating group is something that is not a quorum of the board, right? Because we need to do this in a private session, obviously. So up to 2 people from the board can be involved. You can include me in that as well, and anyone else you see fit.
So why don't we do that? We have an executive session after this, so
Okay.
I have some notes that we can cover it all. So you're walking out of here at the end of the day with, you know, a clear path. Okay. Is that okay with everybody else?
Yeah.
Okay. Next up is an authorization to submit an application and match commitment for Rivertown feasibility study of food scraps curbside collection. Do you want to say something about this?
Absolutely. So the village mayors and the administrators and managers have been discussing at least the idea of implementing a curbside food scrap collection. And in order to do that, they need to understand how it can be done, the mechanics of doing it, the economics of doing it. It could be fairly complicated if it includes all 7 villages of Greenberg and Sleepy Hollow. So we're looking to get some professional help and engage a qualified planner or some consultant that can help us in studying the issue and looking at all sides of it. Again, both logistically, economically, all aspects of it. So we've identified a relatively modest grant from the Hudson River Valley Greenway. We've had preliminary discussions, our grant writer has, and they believe that the grant program is a good fit for this. They would fund $25,000. It's not a huge grant program. The scope of the study hasn't been fully defined yet by all the villages. I think we don't need to fully define it by the time we submit the grant application. We have a pretty good outline of what the scope will be. It can still be fine-tuned, but ultimately, if we do get the grant, we would then issue a request for proposals. And in the course of doing that, we would better define what our scope of the study is. But I mean, I gave you a very high-level overview of what the scope is to study that topic.
And the 70 that we're matching, is that ours or is that spread among the communities?
So that will
That's
be,
our unit share?
well, yeah, the mechanics of it are that we would be the lead applicant. So the Hudson River Valley Greenway is going to make us responsible for the match. However, on faith, all of the other communities are adopting resolutions that are, I know, you're going to have to hold the other mayors to task if they don't, but we would each be,
blockade at either end of the village.
we would each be responsible for $10,000, and each of the communities are adopting resolutions to that effect.
Got it.
But the mechanics are that everything would go through us, so
Okay.
it's a again, a technicality, I think. I think we have the trust of our other communities.
I think I would agree
I don't think a blockade would be very
with that.
effective. Very easy to get around Irvington.
All right.
I can threaten it, though.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing about the food scrap collection, which I think is important that it be all of the villages, because the amount of food scraps that can potentially be sort of collected collectively, and there's one facility. So I think that's important, because it's not what the current state is and what the current level is, but the impact of all of those communities and understanding what exists currently, which is likely not to be sufficient.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, look, we're small villages, and if you look at a village that's been doing this for a number of years, Scarsdale, they have a very energetic group. They've had a program, a curbside collection program. I think they get about 30% participation amongst the entire community, and that's been a well-established program that people have pointed to as a model. So in reality, when we first hit the ground running, we're going to be at probably 10%, 15%, if that, of people that'll be taking advantage of it. To do that on our own with the equipment required to do that just isn't cost effective. So it really is an idea that makes sense to do this with multiple communities, and in this case, 7. So.
And this came out of the village officials committee, so
Yes.
that the other mayors and village administrators have sort of said, yeah, this makes sense. Okay.
I mean, it is really this keeps coming up in different issues, when we can ban other villages, it makes things more cost effective. And when Charlotte brought this up a year ago, it was a good idea, but it was hard for us to do, so it's great that there's this way to make that happen.
Yes, it's going to take a bit of time. I mean, I know there's an anxiousness among people, but it's a complicated issue. To think back to the days when curbside recycling was implemented, that was a huge effort.
Yeah.
To implement that.
As long as we're moving in the right direction. Right? That's the idea.
Yep.
All right. So I will make a motion that reads, whereas the village supports a planning study of a joint program of curbside collection of food scraps for composting. The study will assess the feasibility of a collaborative initiative, including the villages of Ardsley, Elmsford, Dobbs Ferry, Hastings, Irvington, Sleepy Hollow, and Terrytown. And whereas the Hudson River Valley Greenway Planning Grant Program has been identified as a funding source for the study, which is estimated to cost approximately $95,000. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington hereby does authorize submission of an application for a $25,000 compact grant to the Hudson River Valley Greenway Planning Grant Program for the feasibility study of food scraps curbside collection project, and upon award of such request, commits to match the grant with up to $70,000 in order to implement the project, and further resolve that the village administrator is herein authorized to take any and all such steps as are necessary to effectuate the intent of this resolution. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Trustee liaison reports. You wanna start?
Sure, yeah, I've got a short update from the building department this week. They just turned on the permit and violation parts of the new building department software this week. I think the resident filing went online today, and the board portal is scheduled to be turned on Friday, or in February, sorry.
No report from.
I just wanted to mention that the theater, has been, we've been closed since COVID, so it's coming up on 4 years. But the effort that the theater manager and that I almost said trustees, the board, the theater board, has been putting in to keep the theater vibrant is really great. And they just announced that the 4th annual Short Play Fest, the Arts Incubator, is going to happen in March. There's now a call for submissions, so they're looking for unpublished, unproduced plays of 20 pages or less. And the deadline for submissions is January 23rd. And the event will take place both online and in person around the area at different venues between March 10th and March 16th. So if you know anybody who's a playwright who wants to get some eyes on and have a produced reading of one of their short plays, go to the theater website and there's information on it.
So DPW is doing the tree recycling. It's on the website, the schedule, which is Mondays and Thursdays, depends if you live on the north or south side of the street, but the Christmas trees have to be free of ornaments, lights, tinsels, and they can't be in plastic bags. They will not be picked up in plastic bags. And they're going to be doing that as manpower and weather permits. Also from DPW, just, they're continuing to do the work, working through the holidays. They're working on the East Sunnyside Lane curb project. It was postponed due to weather, so hopefully they're completing that by the end of this week. And the Parkside Way transition to a one-way street is scheduled for January 9th. Okay, so Chief Pignatelli wanted to thank everybody for their generous support of No Shave November and Double Down December. They raised $4,810 for Swim Across America, which will be used to directly fund cancer research and patient programs. And the fundraising was it was in honor of Detective David Walsh.
Village administrators report.
So just a quick note that earlier today, we met with Metro North officials out at the Ardsley train station. The goal of that meeting was to examine some of the flooding problems that we've been having that reoccur when we have heavy rain. It floods out obviously the lowest point, but it floods out where the elevator is and the stairs onto the platform. And they've been for probably 3 or 4 years ignoring us and saying it was a village problem. And I think they've figured out today that it wasn't a village problem, which we already knew, of course, but we finally got their attention and they were out there, so that's a good sign. Not that it's fixed yet, but we have their attention. I don't have anything else except that I did make a little field trip this evening before the meeting. I had a wad of Christmas lights that I needed to get rid of, and I went to Mom's Organic Market in Dobbs Ferry, and they have a box there where they collect them for recycling. It's one of the only places I could find that actually does that.
Where?
Mom's Organic Market. Right
On
at
the sawmill.
Dobbs Ferry, yeah, at the Rivertown Square.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Oh, okay.
as soon as you walk
It's for
in.
recycling Christmas lights?
Mhm.
Oh,
We
that's
don't
so
take them,
cute.
yeah.
I think the county might take it, because I'm doing a run, you make an appointment, and they take all kinds of things from like textiles, and electronics were on the list. I don't know if that
No, we
qualifies.
recycle electronics here, but
That's not electronic.
those aren't considered
Oh,
electronics.
wow. Wait, the village takes electronics?
We do, yeah.
I didn't know that, where?
I think there's a drop off at DPW, but if you use your recycling app, it'll tell you.
I have to go to the county.
Don't feel bad, I also go up to Valhalla.
Okay.
I have a car full of stuff. so,
Thank you.
I'm not a county resident, so I don't go up to Valhalla, but I did go to the market. It's actually real convenient. I didn't have an ability to go shopping tonight, but if I did, looked like a nice place to
And
go.
that's it? I'm sorry, it's just Christmas tree lights? Or
Well,
is it a bigger category?
No, that's it.
Wow.
They collect a lot of different things over there. I mean, I'm not an advertisement for them. I've
It's
never
peculiar.
shopped there, but they do collect a lot of other things, but Christmas lights happens to be one of them seasonally.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All right, village clerk treasurer's report.
No report this week, just getting ready for the budget.
Got it. Village attorney?
No report.
Okay. Assuming nobody's online, so there's no public comment.
well, there's people online, but
Oh.
if anyone
Well, if
has a
anyone
comment, they can
raises
raise their hand.
If not, the action items, at least when we go to executive session, we can talk about the IBAC comments that we made and a few other things.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I make a motion for executive session or just,
Yes.
okay, like I'm making a motion for executive session, a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Regarding 3 personnel matters.
Thank you.
We staying here or we're going upstairs?